Hello, Empower Hour. It is on November the 16th. Welcome. We've got it's going to be just an awesome Wonder Woman kind of conversation, casual conscious conversation. I've seen you in your Wonder Woman suit, Dr. Shawn. I've got to say that. And so, yeah, we're just going to talk about adult children. And if you can resonate with being an adult children, which is probably why you're here, please feel free to engage with each other. Put your hand up, write down in the comments, whatever. Dr. Shawn and I are going to be having a conversation, and we're going to spill the beans. And I think I would really like to have Dr. Shawn introduce herself first, and then I'll introduce myself after, because I've got a little something different to introduce my story, and then we'll go into the laundry list and the adult children. How does that sound?
Sounds good. So I'm Dr. Shawn Horn. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in Washington State, faculty of the University of Washington Medical School. I am a columnist for TWA Magazine, and I recently did my first TEDx talk on shame, on the neuroscience of shame. And I am an educator about shame, so we could take the shame out of shame and really understand our human function more and to discover emotional freedom. So I'm on YouTube, Instagram, just about everywhere. And you can follow. Oh, and I have a podcast, Inspired Living Podcast, so you can learn more there. And I'm a mom of 2 adult children, and I have a chicken and a new kitty, and I love kayaking. And I'm obsessed with Wonder Woman. So that's me.
I love it. And hi, Rosha. She's just kidding now. And I am Janine McJanet, and I am an empowerment coach and mentor and a poet and speaker. I like to integrate those kinds of things. I wasn't always that. I was stuck in a corporate cage of complacency, I say, for almost 3 decades, until I kind of sprouted out, burst free, and decided that life was much more than air quality monitoring. So now I'm doing a lot of soul excavating and monitoring, which is much more exciting for me. And I live in the Yukon in northern Canada, and it's way below zero right now. So we've got a lot of snow. And I have 2 children as well. One is 15 and one is 13. So hello, challenges with teenagers. It's such a blessing. And it's really, really my big excitement at home now is turning all of the challenges into opportunities, which sounds so much easier than it actually is, but it's great. I'm an adult child as well. I grew up in a family of alcoholics. Both of my parents have gone now. And so it took me many decades to realize that the way I was, what I was doing, how I was reacting, and how I was hiding, and all of the things that we're going to uncover in the laundry list, it was just such a realization that, oh, I've got something in common with all these other people in the world, and this is why. So it was really, really groundbreaking for me to do that. So I've built my own personal healing and my business around helping people like myself. And I do have a song that I wanted to play with you, which really succinctly gives my story. It's 2 minutes. And I wrote this song, and I wrote it as a poem, actually. And then I just recently collaborated with an incredible musician down in Australia. And I'm so proud of this because she's just got a beautiful voice, and she just put it into a melody with her guitar. So I'm going to share that with you. And then that's my story. And then Dr. Shawn, we're going to dive into that. How does that sound?
Sounds good. And I just want to add that it's also for dysfunctional families, which I consider shame-bound families. So even if someone doesn't have an alcoholic parent, we all can relate to this coming from certain kinds of childhood situations.
Yeah. And that dysfunction includes lots of things, like obsessive, compulsive, overly religious, depressed, anxious, obsessive, compulsive, any kind of abuse. What else is there? Like it's a myriad of things, right?
Well, I'm sure we'll cover it.
Yeah. So this is my story, and maybe you can relate. So I'm going to play it. Give me the thumbs up if you can hear it, and I'll just hit play. I was almost born in a taxi cab the night before Halloween. My mother held me in her arms, her little darling Janine. She said, "You'll be my pillar of strength for the next decade or two. Please excuse me and your daddy for what we're gonna do. We're gonna drink and smoke and fight and scream and call each other names. Cards of codependence is one of our favorite games. Oh, we tried our best but had no choice of what we would do to you. So forgive us, we forgive you too. I was almost burnt in a sea of words, the ones that she said to me. The fire I saw, the flames that grew, I blame the family tree. She suffered so much, well, we all did. Wish I had been there through her fear. If I could hug and kiss her now, I'd whisper in her ear. Don't drink and smoke and fight and scream and call each other names. Alcohol and its foul deeds will take my mama away. Oh, I tried my best, but had no clue of what was to come of me. But I forgive myself and them as well. I'm replanting my family tree. That's my story.
That's beautiful. I loved it.
Thank you. It was a lovely project to work on with her, and yeah, that's a little bit about me. And welcome, Jolene, as well. We just hopping in, sharing a little bit about our lives and where we're at. So let's dive into this thing called adult children. Just put your hand up if you are familiar with the term of adult children, and maybe write down in the comments what your definition or what your perception of an adult child is, because there's a few different, definitions going on out there. I'm going to pass it over to you, Dr. Shawn. Take it away.
Okay, so the way I see adult children is any individual that was raised in what I call a shame-bound family system. And shame-bound families have a lot of rules that tell you essentially how to feel, how to think, and how to behave. And they often reverse the hierarchy to where they make you responsible for their feelings, for their behavior. And it causes a child to overfunction for their parents' dysfunction. So essentially they're saying, in order for me to feel right, for my world to be right, I have to do it right. So you'll be all right. And then I can be all right, right? So we develop these strategies to manage the outside world to where we kind of get stuck in that pattern of saying, my safety and my freedoms are dependent on outside things. But this is the child mind that didn't get to progress. The adult mind grows up and then it lives from the inside out, to where regardless of what's happening outside, regardless of the stressors or the storms, I am able to navigate my life with self-leadership and set boundaries and assert myself and exercise my freedoms. But this can be very scary for an adult child because they learned, I can't trust myself. I don't think right. I don't feel right. I don't act right. And if people are upset, it must be my fault. So we personalize things. And then we develop these strategies such as people pleasing, perfectionism, conflict avoidance, go along to get along kind of stuff. And then we get paralyzed, like in this, if we don't want to go along to get along, what do we do? Because the family system is playing by different rules than the normal cause and effect rules. So when we go to adult children curriculum, we're recognizing through the laundry list and things what it looks like, so we can understand, like, oh my gosh, that is me. I do have these defensive strategies. And then we can begin to unlearn those strategies so we can begin to learn new ways of being. Like, we unlearn who we were told we were so that we can transform into the person who we really are, and begin to build self-trust and to know that I'm not responsible for other people's thoughts, feelings, and actions. I'm not responsible for managing them anymore, for overfunctioning, for their dysfunction. And even though I feel compelled to do that, I'm learning ways to manage that. So that's how I see ACA, adult child stuff, and comes in many different shapes and forms. You can have a high functioning family that is like perfect poster Nordstrom church going family and be a hot mess. Or it can be an alcoholic family that, it's just apparent to everyone that they're falling apart. So it's all in between.
Yeah, it is all between. And I can remember, we all have stuff happen to us in our lives, right? There's always something that stays with us that we just can't seem to get rid of, a memory or many memories. And one of my big events in my life, if you look back in your own life and you can remember, I remember that day exactly, because it was a lot of pain that came from it, was almost 30 years ago. And I was up in the Yukon up here visiting my father, and he was living by himself, and he was an alcoholic. I didn't, he had a heart attack, and I was like, oh, he had a heart attack, he's going to be fine. And I was heading back to Australia to, visit my mom and to stay there. And the very day before I was going to leave, I went in to see him in his house, and that's where I found him. And he was passed away. He had taken his last breath, and I was in shock. That was it. And like, my life had just been turned around. And what I did then, a lot of people go, oh, this big thing happened to me, and I just started to become this, I started to do the soul searching and really wake up. But for me, I completely stuffed every single thing down. I don't think I told anybody beyond my immediate family that had happened for years and years. Oh, isn't that normal? So I really suppressed those feelings, and it took decades and almost 30 years for me to uncover that truth and to be able to speak about it. And through all of that, as you were mentioning, Dr. Shawn, there's the shame and the blame, there's the guilt, there's the resentment, there's the depression and the anxiety. Like, it was just a whirlwind of everything. So when I started to speak about this, I looked up on the internet, and I just said, because I needed a name for the speech that I was preparing, and I didn't want to say found my father, I put in alcoholic father, and the laundry list came right up. And I looked at this and I said, what is this laundry list? Like, is this something, what is this? So I started to read it, and I remember reading the first one and just going, and I just, what's going on here? And honestly, it took me about 10 minutes to read this short list. And I think we can go through that now. And I resonated with so many of them at different levels. But I just remember finishing reading it and going, oh, I'm not that crazy. I'm not that bad person that I thought I was.
And it's a thing. You read it and you're like, that's a thing. Like, I didn't know, right?
It's a total thing. So do you want to go through the laundry list? We can go through it and identify what the main traits are of adult children, and then we can hop into it, and they all have underlying connections with them, and we can have that conversation and then open it up. How does that sound?
Yeah, I thought you're going to read it and then we'll dive deep in number 2. Yeah.
Number 2 is my favorite. Says the recovering people pleaser. So do you have the list with you? We can just take turns and
I don't have it pulled up, but I could do it real quick. Go ahead. Just you
Number
can go ahead.
one is we became isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. And that can mean so much on the outside. Becoming isolated and afraid of people just means that we don't want to, we're afraid to speak. We're afraid to tell our truth. We're afraid to show up as we are. And we feel alone. And I can remember in my teenage years, I couldn't speak. I had this thing, you know, people said I was shy, and I used to think, oh, shy is a real thing. But now I realize that shyness is just a form of fear and isolation for speaking. And these thoughts would be going through my head. And I was afraid. I was really afraid of being judged and afraid of being told down, because that was instilled in and conditioned when I was growing up. Do you have anything to add to that?
No. Yeah. I'm going to put in the message. I just accidentally sent it to one person, but I'm going to send the message to everyone where they can find the laundry list.
Yes.
Online.
Perfect.
Okay.
I mean, you just Google the laundry list ACA and it'll pop up right there. Number two is we became approval seekers and lost our identity in the process. Aka people pleasers. And oh, this one just took me down. I was just like, what? I do try to help everybody. I thought pleasing people was really good. That's what my mom taught me. And that's how I felt good. And that's how I felt loved and approved, was just like doing things. So I could never actually have a dinner party or any kind of gathering and relax, because it was like, are you okay? Do you need anything? You okay? And people just like, just sit down, relax. And that word itself, relax, was one of my triggers for years. How can you relax? Oh, there's so much to do. And this sort of created the crazy Janine that I was for most of my life. That's number two.
Shame Bound Rule says, make mom happy, make dad happy, right? Don't say anything that is going to make us upset, and don't disagree with us, and don't remember differently than we do.
Number three is we are frightened by angry people and personal criticism.
Paralyzing.
Yeah, who can relate to that? If you relate to any of these, let's go for number three. If you relate to that, just put a yep in the message. I mean, doesn't mean that you're all in it, but if you can relate some part of your life into feeling that feeling. And it was only 2 months ago when my therapist said to me, why are you so afraid of angry people? I didn't even realize that this one was such a trigger for me. And my husband, when he talks a little louder and sterner, I just go, whoo. And so when she asked me that, I went, oh, damn, the laundry list has come back. Number three right there. So.
And that's a trauma response. And that's what I want to break down for everybody. It's the medical component of that trauma response. So we'll go into that, but it is trauma. And that's why we paralyzed, because the anger was so intense. Or the silent anger, that can be even more terrifying when you get this silent rage, right? So it conditions our nervous system to avoid it, to save our life. And so it's very intense. And when other people say, well, it's not that bad, it can make us feel like, well, what's wrong with my thinking? That I think it is. And when you've been in an adult child, or, the shame-bound family, you've been gaslighted, told that you're not seeing it right, you're not perceiving it right. That's not how it was, and so you're used to gaslighting, being gaslit, so you'll gaslight yourself. And gaslighting means that the people are telling you the reality is different than how the reality really is. So it makes you feel like your perception is wrong, and you can't trust the way you see things and think about stuff because something's wrong with you. But that's when it's not. Yeah.
Ouch, right?
Yeah.
Number four is we either become alcoholics, marry them, or both. And again, alcoholics or some other dysfunction, or find another compulsive personality, such as a workaholic, to fulfill our sick abandonment needs. Go ahead.
The way I understand that is like, as a child, you're saying, if I can get daddy to stop drinking or doing whatever and approve of me, then I'm okay. And because that wound never got repaired, then you keep casting the same character. It's the same character, cast a character, but it's a different player, right? So think of, we're on Gilligan's Island. You got the professor, you've got the millionaire, right? So you have the same characters, but until that character does it right, you keep casting into it. And that's how we're repeating that need, is if I can get you to love me enough to where I'm worth you stopping this compulsive behavior, then I am worthy. I did do it right. But it's not, you can't satisfy that insatiable. A judge's judge. You can't change a judger. You can't, you're not powerful enough to be the villain, and you're not powerful enough to be the hero. So it just makes you scratch your head and say, what the heck? And what I'm going to say is just fire yourself from that job, girlfriend, because it's not a job that you can achieve. Right?
Yeah. And that's like sitting in the middle, like you say, and this wishy-washy feeling that adult children have. And people pleasers, the hardest thing to do is to make a decision. You sit in a room with a bunch of people pleasers and say, well, let's go out to lunch, and nobody can make a decision. Let's go to Italian. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, okay, maybe. I'm not sure. And so it's this indecisiveness that is also a really good indicator that you aren't powerful enough for either of those roles. And this is what the work is about. It's like breaking free from this feeling that we need to, seek approval from others, and that we have to be whom others want us to be, rather than standing up and speaking our own truth and fighting for what we believe in.
Yeah. And it's terrifying because you've been told you're not good enough to get unconditional love and so forth. So we don't know that we could be okay without trying to be who they tell us to be. So that's a big leap. It takes a lot of courage, but we're here to attest that there is a rainbow on the other side, right? Or however you want to say it. And so do it, and it's going to be good. So
5 is we live life from the viewpoint of victims and are attracted by that weakness in our love and friendship relationships. Does anyone recognize or resonate with that pattern? Having, continuous relationships that have that kind of that pull for us to, be the one that's hard done by, the one that just never gets it right, the one that, always fucks up, excuse my language, when it's not necessarily true.
You keep casting yourself in that role.
Yeah. Number 6, which was a big one for me, is we have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it is easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves. This enables us not to look too closely at our own faults. So you can start to see how some of these traits are actually integrating with each other in terms of people pleasing and just not being yourself.
Mm-hmm. And you've been given the value of doing a really good job taking care of other people, potentially. And so we continue that caretaking role because it's so rewarding. But then that means we have to find and surround ourselves with people that need to be taken care of. It's exhausting.
So that's like the fixer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Number 7 is we get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves instead of giving in to others. So I can remember times I've even seen it in movies where these really introverted, shy, hurt people put on a real facade and stand up and they pretend, that they're in control, and then they shrink right back down. And I'm like, oh, wow. They say if you practice things enough, you will change, but you have to really start to do the work, is why people, get that guilt feeling for just speaking their voice. It's our birthright, right?
Mm-hmm. So let's define that real quick. Guilt is what I feel when I violate my standards. Shame is what I feel when I violate your standards. And toxic shame is what I've come to believe about who I am because I violated your standards. So guilt is a conviction, it's an internal conviction. Shame is an external social correction. And toxic shame is social condemnation. Okay. So that's where it becomes a problem when conviction and correction goes to condemnation. We do need correction. So shame is a strong stop right now. That is going to hurt you and others. Stop. We need that when we're doing really dangerous things, right? But the toxic shame says you're bad because you did that, and it attacks your identity. So what happens, and I get this question a lot, is shame teaches us social standards. It teaches us the rules of the community that we're in. And it tells us these are our norms, these are our morals, our values, and so forth. And over time, we adopt them. We adopt them and weave them into us. And then if we violate those standards, now it's because it's in us, we feel guilty, right? So let's say, for example, I saw this with Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart, where I forget who it was. Somebody ratted on all these rappers that they did something wrong. And Snoop Dogg went on and said, my girl Martha, she even knows to keep her mouth closed. And it really struck me because I'm like, what the heck? And what is happening there is they were in a community that is a ACA community, right? That taught you are to be overly loyal where loyalty is not deserved. And loyalty is a virtue, silence is a virtue, and you don't rat on people. And if you do, you're gonna get the punishment of the group, right? So Snoop Dogg has adopted that. That is now his code of conduct. And he is rewarding other people that do it, celebrating Martha Stewart for being overly loyal and for being quiet when maybe it's more appropriate to speak up. And he's punishing the person that's coming forward and saying these people did a wrong thing. So for those that are watching that, if they admire Snoop Dogg and they want his approval, they're going to say, well, I too will keep my mouth shut and be overly loyal. And so then when they're not, they feel guilt. I've done something really wrong, right? So that's how that happens. And that's how with a adult child, you end up adopting over time these rules that they've told you. You're a good person if you go to this, you have this religious activity. You're a good person if you don't tell people that we're doing this behind closed doors. You don't tell our secrets. You keep it inside. You don't reach out for help. And that is a strong person. So you get these like values of I'm a strong person if I can take it, if I can get hit and take it. And I'm still there for my man, that kind of stuff. And so that's where we have to unlearn, because some of these things are so normal that people don't know that that's not what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. And Carissa says, keep the family secrets. Mm-hmm. And this is where beliefs are born, right? We hear and we do, and we feel safe, protected, and secure because of the action or the non-action that we take. So our beliefs start to be born when we're very young, and then they just get strengthened and strengthened until we're 20, 30, 40, 50. Mm-hmm. And then until we look at that, until we do the work, we believe that our beliefs are right. Mm-hmm. But it's deconstructing those beliefs and actually looking back to see, yeah, it may have helped me back then when I was a child, mm-hmm. but right now it's not true anymore. And you actually carry beliefs of your guardians or your parents or your teachers or even your siblings, and you stand behind them. And this thing called cognitive dissonance starts to come into play, where you're like, I feel like this, but no, it's wrong. Is it right or is it wrong? Mm-hmm. And that's that whole indecisive.
I see that all the time in therapy, where people come in and I get a developmental history from them, and I'll ask them questions about their mom and dad, and they'll tell me a truthful thing, like this happened to me. And then they'll backpedal, say, but I don't want you to think they're bad people. I don't want you to think that, because they really are good. And they feel tremendously so much guilt for speaking the truth, as if their parents are hearing them in this godlike way through the walls. And they've been told, be nice. It's mean to say that about daddy or mommy or the family, or don't tell them that this happened to you because you'll get hurt. And or you'll hurt their feelings. What I tell people is that it's not about shaming and blaming our parents. It's about identifying what didn't work, what was ineffective or maladaptive, so that we can correct it. And
Mhm.
I teach clients about non-judgment. It's a skill. And so we learn that, but we want to have that mindset. It's hard to speak about these things sometimes because we feel bad. But just weather it, it's going to be okay. We're just identifying the problems so we can come up with a solution.
Mhm. Because for every problem, there is a solution.
Mhm.
And in this ACA world, adult children world, there is a laundry list, and that is the problems. And there is also a companion, which is the solution. They've actually got two laundry lists and two solution lists in there. So we're just diving into this one. Ugh. Um, the number 8, I think we're up to.
Mhm.
We become addicted to excitement. Can you believe it? We become addicted to excitement. And this excitement doesn't necessarily mean it's all good and it's all fun and games. The excitement from my own experience is chaos. And you know, this is where I'm living, that this all happens. So my family was just full on chaotic. Like there was arguments and screaming and fighting. Nobody listened to each other. It was like whoever was the loudest wasn't even heard, but there was just no connection. And so coming out into my adulthood and into my parenthood, I found myself, and I just I just acknowledged this to my husband like a few weeks ago, that yeah, I create chaos because it makes me feel comfortable, and I know that I know what I need to do. So there's that comfort level in it, and there's also the, you know, knowing the outcome of it and being able to guide myself away without having to fall into vulnerability and recognize and admit that, you know, I could have done something different.
So I want to chime in on this one because I have a little different spin on it with our latest research about the polyvagal theory and our nervous system. And when we're under constant fight and flight or freeze state, and we did not have a family, a developmental history where our parents could do what we call co-regulate, which is where they could be safe when we're distressed, soothing when we're upset. Our nervous system doesn't get regulated efficiently, which means that we can't go from calm state to fight and flight or freeze and back to calm effectively or even at all. And so if somebody has had trauma, shame is trauma. I'm not talking about 9/11 trauma. I'm talking about being scared and having no one there and you can't regulate. We can't bring it down. And so then when people say, let's meditate, let's do yoga, some people have panic attacks when they stop or when they rest or when they quiet the mind and their body, and they feel total panic and they can't do it. And they think, what's wrong with me? And people say, oh, you're addicted to this. You're not addicted to this. Your nervous system is stuck. And you can't, when you try to get out of it, it alarms because the body doesn't know what's going on. It doesn't know how to read this. Your body is hardwired to try to figure out, how do I survive? And your feeling brain is 25 times faster than your thinking brain. So the feeling brain is saying, I don't recognize these things. So it's like I just went from cave world with dinosaurs to water with like sharks. I don't know what this is. And so because it's unfamiliar, we get uncomfortable and we'll stay where we're comfortable. So I think sometimes when we get the message that it's a choice and you're addicted, we're shaming a neurological response that we now have deeper understanding about, that when we wrote these things in the 70s, they didn't know. So know that there's more help than just getting these concepts, but there are actually somatic body things you can do to help yourself get unstuck and be able to rest into peace.
So what are these somatic exercises
Yeah.
that we
Okay.
can dive into, because where there's a problem, there's a solution, and we want to talk about some things that you can do to pull yourself out.
Yes. So there's you might hear people talk about vagal tone. If you go to YouTube or even on TikTok and places, you put vagal tone, you'll see people do vagal tone exercises. So for example, humming, gargling, tapping on your chest, putting a bag of frozen peas on your chest. If you're having a panic attack or you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't go to sleep because you're so anxious, put a bag of frozen peas on your chest. If you're having a panic attack, you can do, and if you go to my TikTok or YouTube, you'll see instructions on this. You take a cotton ball, dip it in rubbing alcohol, and put it in your ears for 1 to 5 minutes. It will stop your panic attack, generally, unless you have Hashimoto's or something. I mean, there is like physical stuff that you want to sort out too, right? Thyroid problems and stuff like that. And so anything vagal tone, and there's a ton different ones, shaking your body, dancing, singing, running. You got anything that expels the energy from your body. So emotions have a life cycle. You ingest it, you digest it, and you expel it. So expelling is getting that energy out in some way. And when you're stoic and you lock it up, you are going to be emotionally constipated, literally. So you got to let the emotions out. And the other thing is emotionally focused tapping technique. So you might have seen that where people do this thing, right? And there's an app called Tapping Solutions, which really can walk people through. It's great. Meditation, yoga, and let's see, emotionally focused, safe sound therapy, which I now have access to and could help somebody with. It's a 5-hour protocol that helps your inner ear muscle, which is linked to all this, like get unglued from the trauma response. So that's just to name a few. It's anything that's doing with the body and getting, not thought-based. And therapy we used to think it was thought-based, like you think and then you would resolve. But now we know that we have to address the feeling brain when it comes to trauma responses, and you can't get there with thoughts. So you have to have these hacks to get to your body. Has anybody here done anything like that, or have anything you would add that helps with that in the body? Yeah, go ahead and unsilence yourself, Antonia.
Oh, hi. Yeah,
Hi.
I've been doing the tapping, but also I've been doing those 535 hertz, the hertz of sounds, just to get my brain to regulate. And I felt that has brought down a lot of anxiety. To those YouTube videos where you have different megahertz.
Yes, those are awesome. Yeah.
You covered off a lot of them very well there. And Insight Timer is an app. If you guys haven't heard of it, download it. It's free. Insight Timer, SIGHT. And this app has like over 100,000 meditations, visualizations, and talks. And it really is incredible. If you can, it's searchable and you can bookmark things. So if you put in stress or anxiety or sleep, it can really help you, and you can choose your time from 1 minute to an hour. Yoga Nidra is something that I really love to get a full body relaxation, because it's yoga for the mind, not the body. And what I also use is I created this simple way to bring calm, but it doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for me. And it's called the 5 counts to calm. And this is just using your senses to be able to come back home, as we say. So if you feel that you're in a panic, or you feel that there's anxiety there with whatever, in any form, look around you and name 5 things that you see. And you can be as descriptive or not. You can say tree, road, bus. If you're really, really anxious, you're not going to go a nice fluffy white cloud, but that's where you might want to get to, right? To be able to calm. So you go through what you see and what you feel. And I don't mean just feel with your hands, but where you're sitting, what your feet, with your legs, and go four things that I'm feeling right now, whether it's a book in my hand, whether it's, the hair, whether it's my knees rubbing together or my toes in my shoe, and 3 things that you can hear. And this one is really good because we are so wired sometimes, especially in that heightened response, to just stop and listen, whether it is the wind, whether it is a tree or a dog or distant children laughing. 2 things, and this one gets a bit tricky, 2 things that you can taste. And we have one tongue and we have one mouth, but what if we explore that with our tongue and move it out? And even, what can we taste? Can we taste hair, and what does it taste like? So, but to be able to do this quickly, and one thing that you can smell. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you can do that in about 30 seconds, and you can do that anywhere, and it's free. You can do it in the boardroom, you can do it in the bedroom, you can do it anywhere to just come back home. So I just wanted to share that 5 counts to calm.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah.
So that was excitement. See how it's so exciting to be able to just like talk about one thing and how they all work together.
Mm-hmm.
The 9th one is we confuse love and pity and tend to love people we can pity and rescue. So this is the rescuer and the fixer.
Sure pulls on those heartstrings, and you're so conditioned to make people feel better. So it's hard not to go in and do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of the work that I do with my clients is recognizing what your patterns are, like really start to pay attention what you're doing, how you're doing it. When you're feeling triggered, for example, or when you're feeling anxious, like what brought you there, and to start to record them so that you can go, oh, these are my patterns. And then you get the choice of whether or not you want to be able to change them or transform them. Because we can't, we can have all the awareness in the world, but we have to have that level of importance to want to make a change.
And with trauma in these being in these family situations, you get conditioned to not be attuned to your body and your body's biofeedback. So we have to get tuned back in. And so anything that helps us to connect with what we're feeling, am I hungry? Am I tired? Am I tense? And anything that gives you that biofeedback. So like the yoga and things like that is really helpful so that you can pay attention to what the triggers are. Because sometimes you're not tuned in. So it just seems like a phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. Good. And Carissa, is it Carissa? Yes, says singing is simple and effective and has helped escape anxiety. Movement, like any kind of movement, right? Just getting up and dancing. It's just like, whoo, this is it. Embodying it all. Number 10 is we have stuffed our feelings from our traumatic childhoods and have lost the ability to feel or express our feelings because it hurts so much. This is the denial part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's one of those steps in grieving is we just don't want to deal with it now. And that's how, people numb themselves out in various ways. I used alcohol for the majority of my life. Haven't for the last 14 months because I was just like over it, and I'm excited for that. And so is my daughter. I mean, I have to explain that. She listened to the song I played her, and she's like, Mommy, I'm just so proud of you that you're not drinking anymore. And because we're not present when we numb out and when we deny things. We just aren't present in our lives and in those of our families, the ones that mean the most to us. Number 11 is we judge ourselves harshly and have a very low sense of self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And 12 is we are dependent personalities who are terrified, and this was a big one, of abandonment, and will do anything to hold on to a relationship in order not to experience the painful abandonment feelings, which we receive from living with these It says sick people who were never there emotionally for us.
Mhm. Yeah, we were told we're not worthy enough. So how do I know that someone will be there if I change this up a bit?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you know, the last two of the laundry list, because this is 14 traits of an adult child, are a little bit different compared to the first 12, and they're related around alcoholism as a family disease, and that's becoming, you know, even if you don't drink, you carry on, you get the traits from them because that's how you learn to do it, even if you didn't drink, and that's really specific to alcohol. And 14 is that para-alcoholics, those that don't drink but learned how to behave from people who did drink, are reactors rather than actors. So that's reacting to situations. And I think we can all admit that reaction is probably one of the least useful things that we could do in any relationship.
And we'll definitely react when we're in the fight and flight nervous system response. Our calmness of our brain is left the room. So we flipped our lid.
Yeah.
Does anyone have questions or feedback or thoughts you want to share?
Or
On any
comments.
of the-
I think I've gone over what we said in terms of time. Antonia.
I have a question. So, okay, yeah. If I didn't know I was an adult child, I do now. I mean, every single one of them is me. And I'm actually going through EMDR therapy right now. And it looks like, you know, we're trying to go into these things of worthiness and you know, what's wrong with me and all of these things. One big mystery for me is that I have been dating now I've been single for 14 years, and I've been trying to date, like conscientiously, really trying to find a partner, not just like hooking up with people. I mean, I was so dysfunctional, but really trying to conscientiously fall in love. And there was that piece number 9 that said confusing love and pity and tend to love people we can pity and rescue. So I have this weird thing going on where like I fall in love with these guys that are super needy and I want to like be there for them. And then the ones that like I'm super attracted to, I don't feel worthy enough. And they kind of tend to trigger me because they tend to be a little more narcissistic, like my father and my ex. But I'm really attracted to that kind of man. So I'm very confused by the dating scene.
Mhm. I heard someone once say that if they have been in such a pattern of finding an alcoholic partner, that if they went into a room full of 500 men and there was one alcoholic, they would walk out the door with that alcoholic. And the lady who said this is the actress who played the nurse on One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I think she wrote a book on it. But when I heard this, I remember thinking at that time in my life, I had a lot of I was drawn to emotionally unavailable and narcissistic people. And so I thought, all right, if I'm going to be drawn to what is the problem, then I need to recondition myself to learn how to recognize and move towards something else, someone else. So I started to train myself that if I went into a room, a social gathering of some kind, I would notice who I was attracted to and drawn to, and they were off limits. And I would notice who am I not noticing in this room? And those were the ones I would go and get to know and build a relationship with. And I really started to find some gems. And I had to really, there was a certain, I like certain things about the other people that I was drawn to. And so I had to change that a little bit because I think sometimes you may not be as attracted to that person. Like they might seem boring or they might not be as, because we've been conditioned to draw to a certain kind of person and value that. So for me, it was a narcissistic person, right? I had narcissistic blindness. And what I didn't know is there's overt and covert narcissists. And so the victim, the woe is me, that can be a narcissist too. They're just nicer and more, they're a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? And so you have to, because I had that blindness, I I would be drawn and value some of those things that you're told to value. Like if they're flashy, they're this or that, whatever. And now, you have to change those rules. So that's a strategy that I found really effective, is really reconditioning yourself to discover a new kind of person that it's not on your radar. And sit with the discomfort, move through it, learn about it, let it be. It's okay. Feelings are not facts. Thoughts are not truths. They're something we experience. They're messengers, something to attend to. So when you're there and you're like, oh, I don't feel good enough, that's just a thought. That's all it is. I don't feel like they'll like me. That's just a feeling, just thought. That's all it is. Push through it.
Yeah. We have something like between 70 and 90,000 thoughts a day. And we don't really have any control over a lot of things in our lives. And we certainly don't have a lot of control over those thoughts. But what we do have control over is the thoughts that we dwell on. And so have a look at those patterns in your life and seeing what, where your energy goes, your energy flows. So what are you thinking? Are you playing the victimhood? Are you continuously telling your story? Look at your story. Like, what stories are you telling yourself over the next week or so? At the end of the day, do some journaling. Like, what are the stories I've told myself today that have pulled me down? Because, we have control. We just have to find it. We have the brain, we have the feelings, we have the heart, mind, soul, all of that to be able to tap into it and ultimately really trust ourselves. Self-trust is the foundation of us speaking up, of us glowing and showing up, of being who we are without having the insecurity of trying to fit into a mold that was created by other people besides ourselves. You're welcome. I see that Tasha has had her hand up for a while. Tasha, if you're there. She's got the big red T there. If you want to unmute yourself and come in, please do so. But yeah, if there's any other
Oh, she said that's from earlier.
Okay.
Oh, sorry that we missed that.
Byron, Katie, yes. Is this thought true? Yeah. That's a beautiful thing to say. These are the stories that we tell in our mind, and this is the patterns that we have to unlock if we want to transform out of this cage that we've built around us. I mean, we're the one that has the key. We're the only one that has the key so that we can unlock it. We could talk.
Any other thoughts or questions? Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a thought. Any suggestions, Dr. Shawn, about, so I created 3 children, beautiful children, who are adult children of me, right?
Yes. Yes.
I'm kind of over the guilt, kind of. I say that because sometimes I go there, right? For creating that unsafeness. I have a daughter with panic disorder. I have an alcoholic daughter, and I have a son who's an addict. He's sober 3 years. Do you recommend anything like talking to them openly about my experience growing up, or does it sound like I'm trying to excuse my own behavior? I raised them like in total, all of these things. That's what I was doing when I was raising them.
Yeah. In general, whenever we want to bring up something to anyone, we want to ask ourselves, what is my objective, like the desired outcome in sharing this with them? Is it that I want them to understand me? Is I want them to, whatever it is. And if we're trying to manage their perceptions and their actions, we're in the trouble zone. We want to let go of managing the recovery. So in most 12-step programs, they'll say, don't do another person's recovery. And so that's part of the healing of the adult child, is we let go of trying to make sure people know what we think they need to know and feel what we think they need to feel and understand, so forth. The best thing we can do is walk the walk. And when I learned about ACA, which I actually learned from Janine, we did a live on Facebook 3 years ago, I think. And she was talking about the laundry list. I'm like, what is this laundry list thing? And so that's how I learned about it. And then I started telling my clients and friends, you should go to ACA. And then a friend said, have you gone? And I'm like, no. They're like, you have to go. So I started going. And as I started to work it and really wrap my mind around this, it was like a culture shock. I realized that I was codependent, which I didn't know what that was. And I realized that not only was I codependent, but I got a doctorate in it, and I'm teaching people how to be really masterful codependents. And I was like, so I had to really back up and rewrite this strategy of how to approach things. And that's when I learned that you stop trying to manage the world outside and you just be your best you, and it will be contagious, really. And so what I found was that my family started to notice that I wasn't getting as activated and I wasn't doing managing things the way I used to manage, and I had more peace. And that really was inspirational to them. And they started asking questions. What are you doing? And so I go, oh, I'm learning this, or I'm reading this. So I would answer their questions. And so a lot of times with adult children, as a rule of thumb, we say we don't want to give unsolicited advice, right? And so if they ask, then go for it. But you will be very powerful in just living what you're doing. And sometimes you can share, like, I just read the most amazing thing. I didn't even know it. And so, like, you're talking with a friend, like, this was huge. And that's it. Like, if you're in an AA meeting, you just talk about your side, but there's not crosstalk. And so it's that kind of philosophy. What do you think, Janine?
Yeah, it's teaching out what you learn. And I see that Tash has also asked if there's any suggestions of helping. This is the book that got me going. It's called Adult Children of Alcoholics. They refer to it as the BRB, the Big Red Book. Now, I have not gone through the ACA fellowship, the program, the 12 steps, because it is a 12-step program. But I'm telling you that the information in this book helped me to start my own healing and to help others go through it, because it really is, I call it the ABC. You need that awareness. You need that awareness of what you're doing. You need to know what your patterns are before you can even think about changing or transforming. And there's so many components into becoming aware and to trusting ourselves, to getting the confidence to speak, to creating boundaries, to stepping up for ourselves. The B is just the bold action. So once we've got the awareness, then we have to take some action, because we can't live in hope or ideas or plans. We have to take the action. That bold action, often is creating healthy boundaries. And the C is consistency. No matter what we do and whatever transformation we do, we have to keep doing it. This is how habits get broken and habits get transformed. So ABC, awareness, bold action, and consistency. And it's getting together, it's connecting, it's talking to people, it's having conversations, it's journaling, it's getting it out. It really is, because we can, I could have chosen to sit here and read this book and just gone, oh yeah, well, I got some problems, and then leave it and continue on. But my whole, network has changed. I have other people in my life now who are supportive, who have conversations, who understand these things, and are on this personal journey of transformation. So in terms of helping get through these, it's support, it's connection, and it's research, and really asking yourself why, and looking at the patterns that you've got in your life.
Carissa has the workbook. Can you show them, Carissa? You have it there. So ACA has this workbook.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was going to say, along with the Big Red Book, which I do not have. So I know that's kind of, sometimes they say to kind of get the Big Red Book first. I just went straight to hearing about this from Dr. Shawn. And this is the steps workbook, and it's the 12 steps of adult children. So this is, and it's much bigger than it looks on the screen right now, but it's a big workbook. And so, yeah, I have this right in front of me, which I just opened up. And as you guys read, the laundry list, it's like the first thing inside. Yeah, it's the first thing inside. So yeah.
You can buy it on Amazon, and then they have
Mhm.
ACA groups around the world and online. So you could do those as well. I know that Janine and I did an episode on my podcast going through the laundry list if you want to revisit it. And then, of course, Janine has her resources. And then I also have Inspired Living School where I teach courses and stuff that are launching. So if somebody's interested and wanting to learn more, they can come to my website, sign up, and then you'll get announcements when those get released.
Mhm. Awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, Chris wants to say something. Go ahead.
I just wanted to go back to something that you guys were talking about in the conversation earlier. It's number 8. It's the we become addicted to excitement. So for me, I remember when I first read through this list, I did it with a friend actually who also got the workbook, and we were doing it together. And I remember when I at first glance, it was like I felt like I really strongly resonated with maybe about like 9 or 10 out of the 14. When you sit like this, like we just did now, and you hear some of them kind of reframed in different ways, like Dr. Shawn did. For me now, like all 14, yes, like everyone. One of the main ones for me that I'm like, oh yeah, yes, that is true, that I did not think was true initially is number 8. We become addicted to excitement. Because if anything, I feel like I'm kind of the opposite. I have a ton of anxiety. I deal with massive anxiety all the time, right? So when I read that, I'm thinking, I'm not addicted to excitement. Like I want stuff to calm down. I mean, I don't want chaos. I think that, and I tell myself that. And when I first read that, I thought, well, that's,
Oh, no. Oh,
sorry.
okay.
Sorry, I got an incoming call. Anyways, when I first read that, I immediately thought, oh, well, that's not me. But Dr. Shawn and I have talked extensively actually about how she reframed that as far as that it's not necessarily like, oh, I love excitement, or even noticing that you're addicted to chaos. For me, it's very much what Dr. Shawn talked about, which is I can feel, and I have told doctors, just like my primary care providers, anybody I've seen and spoken to about my anxiety since I've dealt with anxiety, which has been forever, I have always tried to explain to them that I could recognize that it was like my body was reacting first, like that my body was just having this reaction and I wouldn't even know why. And a lot of times there would not be anything going on that I could even write down that I could say like, oh yeah, that's a trigger. It's just there. It's like it's there all the time. And I remember probably at some point bringing this up to Dr. Shawn, which we talk about my anxiety constantly. And that's when Dr. Shawn and I started talking a lot more about the polyvagal theory, about your polyvagal nerve. And she showed me an incredibly helpful chart, and I wish I had it in front of me right now. And I know Dr. Shawn probably knows which chart I'm talking about. But if you even just Google polyvagal theory or Google polyvagal nerve, or even it's one of those. It's one of the first. Is the vagal tone chart? It shows like it shows the green.
No, it's polyvagal. Polyvagal chart.
Yeah, it's this chart. It's one of the first images that pops up on Google if you look at images, and it shows like green, yellow, red. The like 3 different zones basically, and her and I actually pulled that up during a session, and we're looking at it, and I realized like almost have like a huge aha moment at that moment with Dr. Shawn looking at that chart, that like she mentioned, basically my body like does not know how to be in the green zone. Like I don't know, it's like my body does not know how to exist in that zone. It's never been in that zone because it was never able to be, right? Like if you are growing up in a household, where there is constant chaos, fighting, you're waiting for the you got anxiety, you're waiting for the, whatever the next thing to be, you're waiting for the shoe to drop, and you're in that constant heightened state, or in that, flight or fight, then some of us, I didn't even realize it. Some of us do not even know how to exist in that calm green space. And I think a lot of that has to do with, like Dr. Shawn was talking about, is that your polyvagal nerve literally gets stuck in a state of that fight or flight. So, and that was a huge aha moment for me looking at that chart, because on the chart, it shows like how you feel kind of in each one, or certain things that can be going on, thoughts you can be having. And both her and I both looking at it, she's like, well, where do you think you always are? And I'm like, looking at it, and it was just I was like, I'm always, even when I think I'm calm or relaxing or not like in a state of what I think is panic, I still am in like the yellow. So I am literally always in one of those states, which tells you how much like you're putting your body and like your nervous system through on just a constant basis. But that is just the truth for a lot of people who grew up in whatever kind of home, but like a toxic or dysfunctional family system. I think the truth that is the truth for a lot of us, is that we don't know how to exist in that calm green state. And that really we are just feeling our body is having a physical reaction. And it's not the thought that comes first, because for me, I just like exist in this state of anxiousness for what feels like no reason at all, 24/7. And that tells me that it's like a physiological thing is happening first inside my body, which is also caused by the trauma, the continued state of trauma that, like you said, you grow up, you get older, you become an adult, but your brain and your body don't recognize that you're safe now. Like you're safe, you don't have to be that way anymore. Your body doesn't recognize that. And then I mean, that is where therapy and different polyvagal exercises like you were talking about do come in, because you actually have to retrain and rewire and practice those, certain things for your vagal nerve to literally bring yourself down, to be able to come to kind of get yourself unstuck from that place. So that resonated hugely with me. And that's been incredibly helpful for me in dealing with my anxiety, which is something that I struggle with a lot. So
thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that and for mentioning the vagal chart, because it is very helpful. You go to images, Google it, go to images, and you'll see it. And this really helps us take the shame out of our experience and as adult children, when we learn about how our bodies work and brains work and how to rewire. So thank you, Carissa.
Yeah.
I know we're running out of time too. So I don't know
it's 7:45, so maybe we can take another 3 or 4 minutes, wrap up. But before we did that, I wanted to just mention to you, Carissa, that control has been a big silent partner in my life, where a lot of my reactions and a lot of my own anxiety has come from my deep and unconscious desire to control situations, to control the outcome. And what I have learned, and I know to be true, is that the sooner we give up that desire for control, the sooner we give up the trigger for anxiety. And so it's again looking at these patterns is, what are you trying to control? Ask yourself that, ask myself that, if you're in a relationship, if you've got kids, whatever it is, when do you get triggered? And is control one of the underlying factors in that? And can you give yourself permission to not be right, to let go of the control and watch the anxiety slip off as we step outside and start to watch ourselves, rather than be inside trying to fight ourselves as to being who's right.
Yes, I completely agree. Dr. Shawn and I have talked. She's my biggest cheerleader for that, also for telling me that I cannot control the situation, no matter how, that's no matter how hard I try. And you have to learn how to kind of like catch yourself at it, like realize how much effort you're actually exerting, even when you don't realize you are, because you're trying so hard to control the outcome of whatever given, situation or somebody else's mood, behaviors, whatever it may be. Yeah. So we have talked a lot about that also.
Yes, right on. Jesse, who's listening, just put a note in for you, thanking you, Carissa, for sharing that. And this is the beauty of it, really, is when we can connect and have conversations like this. So just the name of the podcast
I'll
of,
put in here.
yeah, Dr. Shawn, is the Inspired Living. We just had another conversation as well on adult children. I think that's our third one now.
Yes.
And I've interviewed and had conversations in my Facebook group with Dr. Shawn as well. I'm not at the podcast level yet. That's coming next year.
Yes.
But these conversations are always rich and real. And so what I've got going now in this empowerment lounge is to have conversations like this. And Dr. Shawn and I will be getting together again, because there's just so much. There's so much to share, and there's so much value that we want to be able to give, so that we can help and guide other women to break free from the fear and from the control and from this whole, cage that we live in called adult children, and be proud of it and work through it and do the work. And then again, there's just so many different levels. So but that's what's going on in the Empowerment Lounge. Right now it's monthly, but I could see it moving up a bit. And it's all very empowering to be able to sit here with women and have, open, raw, vulnerable conversations about what it is. That's what we do. That's the beauty of masterminding and diving into it. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Lots of gems here. Lots of great conversation. Thank you, Penny. And thank you, Tasha, Jesse, Antonia, and Chris. And thank you, Dr. Shawn, for coming in.
Yes, thank you. Oh, yes, Carissa. You have to unmute. Are you saying something?
There we go. I was just going to say one last quick thing. If you're like me and you live in a really rural area, I do, and you want to, be involved in like any of the adult children, any of the ACOA stuff. I think it was Dr. Shawn who originally suggested it to me, like to look online on Facebook and things like that. And they do have private, like there's private Facebook groups for adult children of alcoholics, because I have nothing anywhere even remotely close to me as far as going to any actual meetings. So I joined like a private Facebook group. And everybody is incredibly supportive. They all seem to be very safe spaces for people to share. And then people will even ask like, hey, I'm in whatever area, or they'll say like, do you know of any online like Zoom support group meetings happening? And people will post those and things like that. So just if you happen to live in a rural area and don't have readily available access to any ACOA groups, they are available online and through Facebook and things like that.
Thank you. That's right.
It is. Everything's moving online. COVID's killing. So this is where it's at.
Lisa, can you turn your head a little bit over to the side, because your haircut is insane. No, the other side. The other side.
She wants to see it, isn't it?
It's cool, eh?
I want my sister. Oh, thank you.
It is not fixed right now. Dr. Shawn sees me on Zoom all the time. It's not fixed right now, but
Looks
thank
fantastic.
you. And it's a bit grown out right now. I've done everything from super, super short and different colors, so it's a bit longer now, but thank you guys.
Thank you.
I don't know how we connected, but somehow the stars were aligned. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, bye everyone.
Hi, Dr. Shawn. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And, we'll be letting you know in the Empowerment Lounge what's coming up next. And Dr. Shawn and I are going to bring some more juiciness there for you. So thanks for coming.
Right.
Nice to meet
Thank
you.
you.
Jesse. Bye.
Bye.